Okay, so this is going to be my first ever sketchbook tour. It's moleskin. It's like a 4.5 by 7.5. Good thing about this sketchbook is that it's super portable. So I started drawing this one while watching Stranger Things, just picking up on objects that were in it, trying to draw, get better drawing at people. Let's see what else. Some notes about beer. Michelob Ultra. One of the things I really like in drawing are, especially spaceships and stuff like that, are vents and stuff, and I'll explain that later. But I really like the way they look. I guess having an air intake in a spaceship type vehicle doesn't make any sense, but I like it. Just some more ideas. I like chunky looking spaceships, kind of like inspired by the Alien franchise. You'll notice that this one's not aerodynamic at all. This one takes inspiration from a helicopter pilot or a cockpit. B-17 belly gun. Really like that shape. I think it's fun. Line of sight weapons are always fun to draw. Missiles and stuff like that are boring. And you'll see this concept played out a lot. I really like the idea of troop transport type things. And this sketchbook is mostly just concept designs. There's not a whole lot of anything else in it. So I like the idea of like a kind of Vietnam, duster comes in, drops these guys off. Here are some gunners with heavier machine guns kind of stationed up here, providing cover while these guys get off. You have engines here, or air intake again. Then you have some sort of sensors or something like that. And then I also really like heavy machinery, just a construction type. What do they call that sort of thing? Terraforming, kind of off-world building type stuff. This would be just playing with like my logo design, logo mark. Can't have too many guns. Not a whole lot to say here. Just playing with different shapes. And then this shape's kind of hard to tell kind of what's out there or what it is. So you have like two engines here and then two more engines up here. Kind of thinking about the Prometheus movie. I think the engine layout was kind of strange or decked like that. So it's kind of exploring with that. And then a huge inspiration, visual inspiration I have is the, what is it called? Red Faction? That's not right. So yeah, Red Faction Guerrilla on the Xbox 360 from back in the day had some incredibly great concepts. And so like these wheels, how they kind of are bulbous, was something that was really common in the game, and I really like that. So playing with some other designs, it's probably hard to tell on here, but I really like gargantuan type vehicles. This thing's pretty cool looking, kind of like a lunar base type thing. And you have I always like adding just a little speck of a person just to show how big this thing is. That was actually pretty cool. I might develop that one further. There's a lot of stuff like that throughout. But I like to think of things as like having like a purpose, and just like heavy machinery is just so much fun. Here's some more of those bulbous wheels. Don't really know what's going on here. It looks like that's like the bridge or whatever have you. Some rifle designs. This was the idea of like a shotgun that was like somehow collapsible. You can tell there's a hinge here, so this thing would just pivot shut so you could like stow it away. I think the idea was like pilots and stuff like that when space is already cramped. This here is a tank. You got your two treads here, and these ideas are super rough, but they're just enough to get an idea down for me. That design gets pushed a little further on this page. You can see how the tank barrel is pretty snub nose here. But then I play with making it bigger, longer. You can tell it like it's pretty common design, but where it collapses in on itself, kind of recoils into itself, kind of like if you've seen like a Barrett 50 cal or something like that. Clearly this is inspiration from Metal Slug. Huge visual inspiration, so much fun. And again, you got some smaller people for comparison. Without these, you don't have no idea how big this is. But then you throw this guy in here, like, okay, that's how That's pretty big, actually. Actually, also, this might be more heavily inspired by what was that franchise? Gears of War. Oh my god, their vehicle design is so good. I like doing that. Some more logo mark type things. I started playing with fountain pens. This was a dip pen, so I was just trying to get my feel around with that. There you go. It's a creative juice. And a lot of these are designs previously made. I'm just trying to get an understanding of how the fountain pen works. And I'm also a really big fan of like, kind of like a tugboat spaceship type thing. I like the idea of like a stout, chunky, big engine, but relatively small design. So the rest of this sketchbook is done with just a regular Bic pen, and these are so great for sketching. I cannot recommend them enough. Also, I try to focus on writing in cursive because I think that's just beautiful, and calligraphy is just another art form. So I try to do that as much as I can. Here I was playing with like different vehicle designs, kind of trying to break the mold of just doing like a 4-wheel or 6-wheel vehicle. So you've got what is this, like a 2 wheels here, like a mono wheel back here, kind of like a tricycle, and then this bulbous thing. It's just a sphere with some other spheres beside it. And I like this shape. You'll see this come up a lot. This one is just a single ring, and I was thinking, and this is kind of like a continuation of that idea. And it says right here, counterweights. So this thing's pretty big, but this is more dense. I just really like this design. And the engine's inside the wheel. And there's some actual real vehicles that do that. There's a lot of tech YouTube channels out there that I would encourage you looking into, and I'll try to drop in the video. But there's these things called land trains. Before the helicopter was super prominent, and they're really cool. A good source of visual inspiration. Here we have treads combined with like a steamroller type thing. Sits low to the ground. Here's you can see a door where maybe troops or someone gets in. And I like these like scientific-y, that's not a word, scientific looking exploratory vehicles. I just think they're so much fun. Kind of thinking about a group of scientists or engineers or whatever, kind of just exploring an unknown world or something like that, you know, or a jungle or a snow environment or something. It's really fun. Here I wanted to focus on making a boat that simply just flies. So obviously this would be lower atmosphere, closer to the ground, because you could stand, walk around the outside. I like this design a lot, kind of like a gunboat looking thing. Here's another design. There are those air vents or air intakes. You got a cockpit, cargo bay of some sort. And I think I was thinking these would rotate, like you see them over here. I'm playing with that idea a lot. Kind of similar to the Osprey. And what's the other one? The V280 Valor. So here's another playing with the same concept, a side view. Here's like a loading bay or something. There's the cockpit on the side. Similar concept. See, there it is. This one and this one are pretty much the same thing, except this one is the detachable pod. So I really like this concept of you could have a spaceship or something fly into the area, essentially drop off a small research facility or a guard post or something, and just fly out of there. Maybe kind of like a strategy game type thing, or there's helicopters today that do that sort of thing on a smaller scale, but it's super cool. I like the idea of a rapid frontier post being established. This one's kind of the same concept, more military-esque. This is just the headlamp right there. Playing a few different designs. More of a flying saucer approach, and then some more guns. I think I've seen the movie was Oblivion. I feel like these would fit in that universe a little bit. Not this piece, but the gun itself closely resembles that sort of that aesthetic. And I really like the idea of a narrow but tall scope. Range combat optic. And then here, that's just like a magazine that would be inserted back here. I think I was learning about caseless ammo. And then I was just playing with the idea of like a tree gun. Then I like the idea of this forward grip folding up in here, so you could hold it if you wanted to. You could hold it here or like this. So you'd have options. I like things that have a believability, a usefulness. I think I went too hard on the writing in here. This was a fun little project. This was essentially, I was thinking like a camera gun, which kind of sounds funny. But I was thinking like if you had like kind of like Ghost Hunter. I don't know. I feel like it would work somehow. But you have like a camera lens. This would be the actual camera, a flash. You would have, cassettes back here. That would be kind of cool. And then instead of like a ghillie suit, you'd have like those old-timey like cloths that the photographer would throw over them and the camera. So I'm like, that'd be kind of a cool way to kind of merge the historical background of a camera into like ghost hunting, which is just absurd, but it's kind of cool. I like it. This is just a wire optic. So instead of like having like a red dot or something like that, you would just have wires crossed tightly and creating the your crosshairs. And then you can tell I went back to this design here, kind of flushed out. I really like the idea of this floating barrel, and then put some Victorian era imagery on the side. I think I was watching a playthrough of what was that game called? The Order, 1886. That game was so far ahead of its time. And then I like this idea of like your optic popping out of the internals. Kind of interesting. Probably not very practical, but maybe you could make it work. And then starting to play with, you can tell I just love those bulbous wheels. There's some people, just to show you how big this thing is. It's huge. And so I like the idea of like a kind of like a truck trailer type situation. Essentially, this would allow for really tight mobility because the driving portion of the vehicle could turn inside here. And I'll show some pictures of kind of the inspiration for that. And this is just continuing this idea just most successfully. This is the guy helping us file our taxes from H&R Block. Just love it. Super nice guy though. And then this was an interesting idea. I put the tread in the back and then developed a skid steer type system. Like this would just like drag. Thought that was kind of fun. And then here comes that's that shape again, the one that we were looking at. Kind of like this concept. It's coming out here. I'm developing it more so detachable cargo, so you could just drop this and call it a day. See, like this is a good example of what that would look like. And then here's a closer up of that cargo unit in this configuration. It's more like a military design or something like that. So you got like people in like a combat vehicle or something. Another layout where there's only the two engines in the front. That's more closely to how the Pelicans and Halo carried vehicles and stuff like that, and I really like that design, so that's stuck around. In the second mission of Halo Combat Evolved, they transport a Warthog back here, and to me, that just stuck with me as a kid. So incorporating it here, there's those vents, there's that Pelican-inspired design where you could carry cargo back here that would be detachable. Here it is in the front instead of the back. Really like this design. This one I thought was pretty successful. And then instead of having just this bridge connecting it right here, it also connects on the sides. This would be a little bit more permanent, slower moving, less agile. And this thing is just a behemoth. I love this design. I think it's pretty cool. Essentially, kind of like an aircraft carrier or like a MEU transporter. For comparison size, you can see here's some vehicles, some like formations going on, some aircraft fixed wing Here's those air vents, and those are actually inspired by the Pillar of Autumn in the mission where you have to create the chain reaction by blowing up the engine reactor or whatever. There were these vents that had fins, and they would open up like that, and you have to shoot a rocket or throw a grenade in there, and it's just so much fun. And I don't know why that visual just stuck with me, but that's the inspiration for these a lot. I just think they're a lot of fun, and also I really like retrofuturism. The Alien franchise and Halo, which was inspired by Alien, it falls under retrofuturism, which I just think is a gorgeous aesthetic, and it's a lot of fun. It's like chunky, heavy machinery. The buttons have big clicky buttons, levers, stuff like that. It's believable sci-fi. It's not touchscreen stuff like that. It's a very tangible universe, very believable. It's not pretty, it's not gorgeous, it's functional. So that's what a lot of the inspiration is here for this. And the inspiration for this right here is I wanted an off-center vehicle bay type thing, and that actually comes from the Titanfall universe. So this is the art of Titanfall. Titanfall universe is a pretty big visual inspiration for me. I wouldn't describe their art style as retrofuturism, which is my favorite, but some of the concept layouts I really enjoy. So it's describing, one of their transport ships, and the garage is off-centered. And that to me just really stuck with me. I like that. I like it not being perfectly balanced. I like the imperfections of it visually. So that's where that came from. And then I had the idea of like, well, okay, if this is like a huge military transport that would occupy an entire region, so when the landing gear come down, they're connected to form like a defensible position immediately. I thought that was a pretty cool design. And then here, just playing with some more spaceship designs, kind of a smaller version of what we just looked at. You can't have too many air vents, and big square rectangle lights. Rectangle lights are a big piece of retro aesthetic. Think of like old Jeep Wranglers and stuff like that from the 80s, when a lot of those old sci-fi movies were being made. I like this design. It oddly enough reminds me of a duck, but I do like I like the presence of it, the shape of it. Kind of looks like that tugboat design that I was talking about. This is just a close-up of like what the landing gear might look like. I really enjoy that. This is me just watching YouTube, trying to understand how to draw people. Drawing people is like by far the hardest thing. Drawing a machine is so easy. It's everything's mechanical. It's set in place, set in stone. It is what it is. But when you get to organic material, it's so much more difficult to make it believable, and if something's not right, then you can immediately tell. That's not to say you shouldn't practice. This is me trying to remember what animals look like. What was this? Red panda or something? Organics are hard. And then this was I was in a parking lot, saw this car, and sketched it, and then added on to a kind of Mad Max universe. This is kind of like a low flying, kind of Blade Runner universe type air vehicle. It would just sit just above the ground, has a flatbed pickup type of vibe. And then played with another vehicle. I can't remember. Yeah, Blade Runner had wheeled vehicles. Yeah, of course they did. Sid Mead designed all that. So good. And then playing with more vehicles, kind of like the shape. The use of the negative space. I like how you can tell it's a Jeep Wrangler just by the door and the top of the hood. I enjoyed that. And then I started playing with other type of vehicles. This one I called the Badger. And again, there's your people that show you how big it is. And you got a little guy up there playing with the headlight. I do like spotlights. Spotlights on vehicles really added a level of believability to it. And then this one, just a massive transport. Here's a house beside it and a tree. So you can just kind of get a feel for how big this thing is. Just huge. And I like putting numbers on these, kind of like naval ships. They'll have 01, 02 showing you what they are and a name associated with it. That's always fun. This was a concept for a machine gun. There's a battery pack that went with it. So there's a battery associated with some military weaponry. That was the inspiration for that shape anyway. So like having like a weapon so big and so powerful that would need an external battery source. So it's not very easily portable. You couldn't have a ground crew with it. It would have to be in a vehicle. Playing around with some different handles, grips for it. And then this one I like. I like things that are, what is the word? Asymmetrical? Definition of asymmetrical.
Asymmetrical means
Yeah.
Having parts which fail to correspond to one another in shape, size, or arrangement, lacking symmetry.
Sweet. Thank you. So asymmetrical. I like things that are not this, so this one, instead of having the traditional, both hands like this, one of them would be almost like a throttle. Don't know why, but it'd be cool, You got some knobs and, cables and stuff like that. This is just that amplified. The next one, this whole page started off this sticky note of a tire. Not a whole lot to it. I just drew the tire tread out here, and then did a few different views. Have these guys here for scale again, and then this little design that's off old trucks. They have this like 4x4 switch activator, so I'm like, that'd be kind of a fun design. And I love having this idea of a access point being between the two tires. So you have this vehicle shape that's pretty square. It's not your conventional vehicle shape, which I like. And you have these are always fun to add in. These are little like marks that you would find on like construction equipment and stuff like that. And here's some more designs. Front view, back view, and here's the door again, obviously Star Wars inspired. And then you get these headlights, searchlights. Here's some more lights because you can't have too many. There's another door, another guy. And then you have this bridge, some cranes and stuff. Just fun. Large vehicles are a lot of fun. And then here we are. We got some spaceship designs. You got a quad engine setup back here. And then an access point here. Here's a side view, some other smaller ships, maybe fighters or something like that. And I don't like sleek, aerodynamic looking ships. I like chunky. It's fun. This one is interesting, very minimalistic, but I think it works. Playing with like a triangle shape. There you have like a cargo hold or something like that. Large aircraft are just so much fun. Transporters, things like that they tell a much larger story than just like a small, like typical like X-Wing fighter type thing like that. You can't have too many air vents. This one's more cylindrical, not really my style, but I was trying it. I do like that design, kind of Ebon Hawk looking a little bit. You got the cockpit fuselage running in the center, similar to that design. Let's see what else. We got some tank tread type vehicles. Obviously, the inspiration for this was the tank from Halo 2 or Halo 1, the Scorpion. So playing with a lot of tread vehicles here on this page. You can get some wheels. Nothing wrong with simplistic. It doesn't have to be. Don't over-engineer. Over-engineering just drives me insane. You can have beautiful, simplistic, functional form. This was kind of inspired by the Alien. What was it? Alien. What movie was that? Alien Covenant? Yeah. So there's a scene towards the end of the movie in Alien Covenant where they have like a kind of like a barge-esque type ship. And just having that like a huge flatbed area for cargo is kind of fun. And then again, you got these engines that rotate from previous designs. So again, we're doing troop transports, largely inspired by the Pelican from Halo. These doors would fold up, giving an approach like this, kind of a fish type look. And then you have inspiration of like Apache helicopter canopies, as well as other sci-fi franchise cockpits. I think Alien had one similar like that. What were those things called? Cheyennes? Let's see. Yeah. Hot take. I don't like that shit design. I should do a video on that. So, all right, here we are. We're exploring some more. You can tell I really enjoyed this shape because then it becomes the focal point of this page. So pretty good. I enjoy these. This one's kind of nice, very angular. Perspective, super far off, whatever. Do like that. Look at all these vents. Can't have too many. Anyways, all right. I got this inspiration looking at the side of a train, an old locomotive. I'll drop an image up here. I was watching an art video by Paul Heaston. Yeah, Paul Heaston. Great artist. Urban sketcher. So I watched one of his videos. I'm like, oh, that's kind of a fun design. I'm going to try to make that into a spaceship. This kind of looks like the Firefly ship if it was reversed. Kind of like a bulbous front end. I do like this design, and just these dual engines are fun. These are pretty successful, I think. I like that one. It's very practical. Then playing with some gun designs. I really like the idea of in Halo 2, throughout the game, it would drop pods that have guns and stuff like that inside them. But this would be like, what if it was a turret in it and it would just bust open wherever that pod lands? It would impale itself into the ground and you could have a mounted machine gun in that location. Pretty cool idea, I thought. Just some other designs. You can tell it's just like, I like chunky planes. I don't usually do curves. Even in this one, it's very, a lot of flat planes. That's kind of cool. Is it, I don't know, tacky for me to say I like my own designs? No, I like it. You know, whatever. They're fun. That was a freelance project I was working on. Oh, I love how this turned out. There's your air intakes, and I like the design of these ships. You can see I'm getting better. My perspective is more on point. Even disregard that. That's so far off. But it feels like it has presence. There's volume to these, and I really like that. I like the idea of ships landing and like construction equipment coming out, or scientific exploratory type vehicles. And then you have these cranes that would run along these tracks for whatever reason. You know, you have a side access point for maybe aircraft or something like that. You got some landing gear here. And I really like this square type shape and like how it almost looks like a Lego set kind of put together. And then I really like adding these like nonsensical shapes in the front. And I got that idea from a book I read. Where are you? Such a fun book. Star Wars Complete Vehicles. In here somewhere, where does he say it? The artist talks, I think it's here actually. Yeah, like sensors and stuff like that. He just kind of throws them on. They're just nonsensical. They're there. Fantastic book. Oh, right here. Also, main forward sensors, and they're just some shapes, but they're exposed. Probably for efficiency purposes. But that's fun. And because of this book, I started implementing that idea into some of my designs. So get inspired by other people's artwork. It's so much fun. Let's see what else we got. Next page, playing again with landing craft. I really like this idea. There's, what are those things called? Military hovercraft vehicle. Landing aircraft. Air cushion. But these things are cool. I'll put some pictures of it in the video. But kind of thinking about like what would it look like for, 3 or 4 of these giant ships, leaving an even bigger ship to drop off military vehicles or equipment or something like that. And I was playing with different engine designs. I wanted them to not be, because a lot of these engine designs I have, they are facing exactly forward, 90 degrees. So I wanted to break away from that. So, and I got this idea from, what's that? Ron Cobb? Yeah. Ron Cobb was the concept artist behind a lot of like 80s, 90s sci-fis. Actually, it's on the cover here. This is the ship from Aliens, some early concepts of it. But the engines are at angles. They're not flush, like in the direction of the spaceship. They're canted sideways. And actually, if you look at the new movie in the Alien franchise, Romulus, they call back to that engine setup, which is just really cool. Let's see where. Very different. So let's see. That should be in focus. I wanted to incorporate something like that. So these engines are at an angle, and you have like the cockpit would be right here. And I was thinking this would be kind of like, I've never been on an active naval aircraft carrier or anything like that, but whoever would sit in here would kind of coordinate with the aircraft coming in and out. But this would be like the pilots. You have a side access point for like ground vehicles or something like that. And then an internal hangar type thing. Maybe the ships in here would come up here and then take off or something via elevator. Here's another view of that ship, and you can tell I put in 2 elevators here. And then here's a couple different designs of this ship, kind of the same concept but different layouts. Kind of fun. I do like how just straightforward this ship design is. Like this, it's not over-engineered, and over-engineering a concept just kills it immediately. It's not memorable, it's not fun, it's just visual clutter. So, you know, and then here you got some rear sensor type things. Here's the exhaust of these 2 engines up front. You know, you have a cargo bay type thing where these vehicles are coming off. They're, you know, they got some cargo already unloaded. There's a windsock. You got 2 guys up here setting up communications or whatever have you. These 2 guys are helping it land. You know, maybe a recon party or something like that. But I really like this. I like these designs. They're very believable, I feel like. Not the best, but whatever. You know, we're learning. It's kind of a fun design. You can see on going back to those angled engines, they would fold down to act sort of as the landing gear. So that's kind of a fun design. Not successful at all. This looks like I ripped it off out of videos of the robot dogs or out of Helldivers. And then here I was thinking about, okay, well, what if these kind of like aren't so much as like legs, but as posts that would, you know, unscrew, move forward, and then kind of like screw into the ground. And you can tell these are kind of like joints. Nah, I don't know. It's an idea though. It's put on paper. I can reference it when I need to. Getting a little bit better. Try not to rip off the classic ATST. You know, you get this idea came from the idea of tanks. They have like little carrier areas for like waters, packs, stuff like that. So I'm like, okay, well, we can add that in there easy. Spotlight, gotta have a spotlight. Those are fun. You can tell this isn't as big because the references are much smaller, or I mean, much larger. Kind of playing with like what the legs would look like. And then just playing with some sci-fi hardware. Hardware is a lot of fun. Kind of thinking of kind of like an AI assistant, kind of like the idea of like in Star Wars, how like R2-D2 could just like kind of plug into a network or whatever. What if you had like a Palm Pilot or something that would plug into a ship's database or communications or whatever have you, you know, translate, stuff like that. And adding a pin here just to kind of show the size. It's very small. It's like the size of an iPhone or a cassette. And then here, just kind of playing with an idea of like maybe a thermal scanner, maybe something that would detect, you know, a gas leak, or, you know, kind of just letting my mind run wild. And I'll tell you, I got the idea inspired kind of from Ron Cobb had a flashlight. He drew, there it is right here. All right, that should be in frame. But he has something like this, kind of the from the Alien franchise movie. So maybe it was like in the movie they use like some sort of sensor. I can't remember it. Detects motion, but this one has like an actual display on it. So that kind of got me thinking of like doing more like sci-fi hardware. You know, kind of focus on things inside the ship. So study other artists' sketchbooks or their artwork and just see how they do things. How did I get there? Oh yeah, this the flashlight. So I was kind of thinking, you know, switches, levers, some sort of audio thing, data insert of some kind. You would have like 2 sub-sensors, a larger sensor of, you know, something. Maybe some instructions are written on the side. And then just some more spaceship designs. These are much smaller. You can see how this is essentially a pickup. You know, here's the guy unloading a box or something. Tires would fold up in here. This one's much bigger. You can tell I was trying to work with this design, but it just didn't come through. These are better. This one's better. It'll come through. Yeah, here we go. This one comes through here. And I just love the way this one turned out. It's so simple. It's elegant, but still beefy. Kind of imagining it you know, maybe a cityscape below kind of lighting up the belly side of it. The neck's not quite right, but I do like that one. It's very chunky. And then here's some designs of that like in a landing assembly area. You can see these are vehicles, people, whoever, whatever have you, kind of getting ready to embark on this. This ramp is so steep. It's like a 45-degree angle. There is no way. Oh my gosh. But yeah. So that's my sketchbook. And just one thing I want to annotate about all of this is this started in August of 2020. 2022, and then I finished it October of 2024. And this was a huge like artistic win for me. This is when I started picking up the pen again, and March 2024. This is when I started taking art seriously again and just kind of making time for it. And since then I've completed a few sketchbooks. But yeah, super excited with how this turned out. And just being creative is just so much fun. And just, you don't need expensive tools. This blue pen is incredible. So you don't need expensive tools. You just need to make time and just sketch, and you'll get better. That's just the way it goes. Like, look how bad these are at the beginning, and that's okay. If you don't look at your old artwork and know that it's bad, then that means you haven't grown at all. And look at where we finished up. These are some pretty cool, well-rendered, original concepts. I don't know. I don't want to ramble, but it's a lot of fun. But yeah, keep sketching. See ya. So lame. What?
So lame.
Yeah. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you'd like to see that sketchbook in closer detail, I'm going to have a digital copy of it uploaded to my website. There's going to be a link in the description of this video taking you to that, as well as links to the social media handles that I use. If you'd like to support me, I am on Etsy under Goldsmith Graphics, where you can see some of the merch I've made over the past few years. And then finally, consider subscribing to this YouTube channel. I have a lot of YouTube video ideas in the works, art tutorials, art book recommendations, live streams potentially, as well as my time in the Marine Corps and how art played a role in that, oddly enough, as well as my time in university studying graphic design. So until then, go put some pen to paper and do something creative today. See you guys. I have store.